Can this only be done in the round? Why only in the round? I need this in the flat. How does it work in the flat? Show me. I hear you. Hey there, and welcome to the Totally Fierce Crochet channel. My name's Thomas, and what can I say? All your prayers and all your questions have been heard, because in this tutorial I'm going to show you 3 different techniques to make our beautiful crochet that looks like knitting patterns in the flat. Now, there have been quite a lot of comments about these patterns and this design with the waistcoat stitch. And yes, it is true. The best results to make these patterns that look like knitted are, of course, in the round. Unfortunately, it is the easiest and the best way to do them. But of course, I wanted to give you some options on how you can still use the patterns and get like a structure that looks knitted even though it's crochet. That would also work in the flat. So in this tutorial, I will not only give you just one option on how to make it, but you will also get 2 more options with different techniques on how you can make those patterns and designs all in the flat. But before heading right into it, I have to warn you, because each of these techniques has their own little flaws, advantages and disadvantages, so you better check them all out and then you can decide which one is your favorite. Enough said, let's go from round to flat. So there have been so many messages after that first crochet that looks like knitting video from people asking if this technique only works in the round. And it is almost true. I mean, this technique with the waistcoat stitch works the best in the round, as you could have seen in my loop or in the headbands. And also the inside looks quite clean and neat, even though we are like doubling up everything and the fabric gets a bit more thick and squishy. But also for this ornament, I just made 2 of the design together in the round and then put it together. So it even looks like it's like 2-sided, but again, it's very squishy and it's a bit thicker. So that's definitely something to consider when you're going to work with the waistcoat stitch. But in this video, I'm going to show you 3 different techniques where you can do the patterns that I provided in the 2 PDFs, in the 2 original videos, to make also designs in the flat. And let's just start with option number 1. For this tutorial and to show you how the 3 different techniques work, I am going to just make this design again. Because I think it's the easiest to show it to you. And I will also add 1 stitch to the left and 1 stitch to the right, so I have 17, just so to balance it out, because we have a thicker border here on the top and the bottom. So then the red in this case will go out a little bit more, but you will see it once I made them. And I'm using red and white. I still have some left, so why not use it? So again, the first technique is actually the waistcoat technique, so very similar to what I have made here. And I will just start again with an I-cord of 17 in that case, even though the pattern says 15. So 1, here we go, 17. And now the first round is very similar to what we have, because we are just going to make 1 single crochet into each of the stitches, just as a base. And remember, if you make the single crochets, always yarn over instead of yarn under, because otherwise you won't be able to see the V's. Here we go. The V's are already visible. They're right here, right in between our single crochet stitches. And now usually what you would do is like to turn your work and continue, but unfortunately the waistcoat stitch doesn't work like that. So what we have to do, and this applies to all of the upcoming rounds, would be to cut it, unfortunately, and I will just yarn over and pull it through, because now we have to start the round always from the new, and for that I'm just going to make a slip knot just like this and take it on your hook, and then we go in between the first two single crochets and make our first waistcoat stitch right on top, and we do this all the way until we reach the end of the round. And also by reaching the end of this first round we will then also see our stitches a little bit easier. Now personally I don't really mind that the waistcoat stitch is a stitch that only works in the round, because quite honestly you don't have to make everything with one specific stitch. But apparently some people are having a hard time accepting that sometimes a stitch just only works in the round perfectly and not in the flat. But oh well. And don't forget the last one. And then again, unfortunately, cut the yarn and slip stitch through it. So now we can see our waistcoat stitches a bit easier, and we do as we did it before, because now we are starting with our second color as well, and we are just going to find our first waistcoat stitch, which is right here, and then take your yarn and make the first stitch, and then the second stitch. And now we come to a point where we would get like one white, two red, one white, two red. So I'm just as we did it for the round version, I'm just going to add my white color. So I go into the next stitch, take the white color, and exactly like we did it before, we finish with our main color, which in this case is the red. And now we can also incorporate the white in our work. So now we have two red waistcoat stitches, and then the next white one. So we take the white, pull it through, and finish the stitch with red, and then the next 2 in red, and then in white, finish with the red. And then again, yarn over again and cut the yarn. And the same goes for the white. So here we go. And this is exactly how you would continue. So always start with a slip knot and then go into the first waistcoat stitch. What you can do, since the white will come in every round, you can always like put it over the hook already, so that you can connect it from the start if you want to, but this is absolutely optional. And from there we just go along our pattern. Which one comes next? Here on top is a red waistcoat stitch, and then we have the next white one. I also tried to like take the yarn with me no matter what, or trying to turn the work, and I don't know, I tried so many things, going back with slip stitches and then doing waistcoat stitches on top of it. None of it really looked good or helped in some sort of a way. So I'm like, okay, let's do 3 different options, and then you can also decide which one you prefer. And the pattern works for all of them, of course, so you can just go along. And who knows, if you'd also like the end part here, I mean, it creates a fringe, so you always have to look on the bright side. So if you want to make something with a fringe, or if you want to just make some sort of a little waistcoat stitch border or finish of a garment or whatever, I mean, you probably won't bother to have like a few more yarn ends to sew in, or just leave it as a fringe. So I wouldn't mind that at all. I mean, if there will be a future project where I would incorporate this technique, then so be it. I mean, still, just like I said, a stitch doesn't have to work always like in all ways. And if it then does, and you would have to do like a lot of sewing in of yarn ends, then so be it. I mean, the result still looks absolutely amazing. So I wouldn't bother about this at all. So this was the next round. We can cut our yarn and then continue all along. I will finish this and I will show you how it looks when I'm done. So here's how it looks in the flat. Here's the back side. And of course, here's like your free fringe that you get when you make it like this. Of course, it also needs a little bit of stretching, so you get like a perfect shape. I think you could even block it, or you just make another border around it, just so that you can get the perfect shape. And of course, I mean, the fringe on the side, you can absolutely use this and just cut it off a little bit, or you sew it in. It's completely up to you. I don't really know if I would sew it in. on such a rather small piece. I mean, now you really have like some sort of a, I don't know, maybe a coaster or something like this. Or you take it and apply it as a patch on some other project or other crochet design. And then you could easily, of course, take the fringe part to the back. So that's an option. Or I don't know. I mean, if you would make it longer, let's say for the border of a cardigan or something like this, then of course you would have the two sides again with the yarn ends, and then the other one comes a lot more far away, so you can still incorporate those yarn ends in your garment. I will just now cut the fringe a little bit to have it more even. And we'll just leave this as your first example of how to make it in the flat. I mean, the stitches and everything look pretty neat, and I do like this version a lot because it's not too thick, and the back still looks okay with all the white spots coming through. So it's really a matter of where you want to use this and how you want to incorporate it into one of your projects. So this was option number 1. I will just leave this here as comparison, because now we can already dive into option number 2, and option number 2 is going to be with Tunisian crochet, and for that I'm not taking a typical Tunisian crochet hook. I'm taking a straight hook that I already have, and of course the same thing. We will first make a chain or an I-cord depending on what you like best. Of course, I will do the I-cord because especially with Tunisian crochet, I think it gives it a little bit more stability for the first round. So let me just make an I-cord. And also remember, when you do Tunisian crochet, to choose a bigger hook size than what you would normally use for the yarn. I mean, here this yarn is, I would say, a typical 4mm yarn, a medium weight yarn, and I'm still going up to 5.5. Here we go. Again, 17 stitches. And like this, we can now pick up our loops. If you have chosen the I-cord method, your first loop is already on the hook, so you don't have to do anything. If you have used the chain method, then of course make sure to chain an extra, then make sure to make an extra chain element to then start in the second stitch from the hook. And I will go directly into the second one, grab the yarn and pull it through until I have 17 loops on my hook. And here we go. Just to be sure, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 15, 16, 17. And now we can start with our typical Tunisian crochet return pass. So first you yarn over and pull through 1, yarn over and pull through 2, and we do this all the way right until we only have 1 loop left on our hook. So this was round number 1, and now to achieve this knitted effect, we would use the Tunisian knit stitch. And for the Tunisian knit stitch, we are always going in between those vertical lines right here all the way through. So not just using this part here or like going in between. We are just, as you can see, you always have like 2 yarn strands. Those were the ones that in the previous round were like the loops that we put up, and we will just go in between them all the way through and pick up our next loops, and make sure to keep it a little bit loose, because if you are a little bit experienced with Tunisian crochet, there's always like this curling in the work because of the tension of the yarn. So always be sure to keep it a little bit more loose. And our last stitch always goes in the corner under both of the loops and put it up. Again, now we have our 17 loops on our hook and we are ready to go back again. First we go just through one and then we yarn over and pull through 2 loops. Just like this, and you might probably already see the V's coming out a little bit. And now we are good to go to incorporate our pattern. So in my case, I'm going to take the white, and the first loop is already on our hook, and the second one is, according to our pattern, still a red one. So I'm just picking the red yarn up, and now in the next stitch we will have our first white loop. So we pick the white color, put it on our hook, and just pull it through. And now it always gets a little bit fiddly because now we have to take both of those yarn strands with us, and then we have 2 red stitches. So the first one, the second one, then we have another white, then again 2 red, and white, red, where is it? So picking up the colors for the Tunisian crochet version, personally I think is way more fiddly than we had it in the other version. So this is what I meant with, there are some flaws with each of the techniques that you're about to see. And our last 2 are red ones. So here we go. The advantage is that you can always see the stitches on your hook, so you can always double check if this is correct or not. And now we are going back, and I mean, I I checked out a lot of tutorials on how people would go back in Tunisian crochet with multiple colors. And for me, none of them was really satisfying, because for me, what would be important is how to incorporate those yarn strands. But we'll see. I mean, I then made I'm going to make my version of this. So feel free to follow along or choose another option. But the way how I do it is I yarn over and pull through just one. Then I yarn over and pull through two. And once the second loop from the hook here is in another color, I will just switch the yarn to pull it through so that it ends here with the color. And then here the second one is now again a red one. So I'm just taking the red up, and here again, now there's white coming. So I'm picking the white and pulling it through. And I'm always overlapping and also making sure not to pull on the yarn too tight, so that in the end your work does not get super twisted. I hope this makes any sense. But I think with this overlapping of yarn, yes, it twists the yarn things together, as you can see here, but still I would want to have some sort of a fixation in there as well. And if you would just do it with one color, then the white would be up here and you have to put it down there. So I thought that this would be the easiest way to do it. And now we can start with round number 3. And again, the first ones are red stitches, and then here comes our first white stitch. Then we have red, then we have white, and the work starts to curl already. So I think it just doesn't make it easier with the Tunisian crochet, but of course I wanted to show it to you just in case you feel like Tunisian is my thing and I'm going to do this with the Tunisian crochet, so you can do it. And again, here's the next red, and I think I'm already at the end, so there will be the last one in red. And now I think you can already see the V's. And now we can go back again. I'm just untangling the yarn a little bit. And with that, we yarn over, go through one, yarn over, go through two. And once the second loop from the hook is in another color, then switch the yarn. And again, remember to not pull it too tight. There will be a lot of yarn strands in the end in your work. Unfortunately, way more than for the first option. And again, untangling. And here we go. I will just finish this and I will show you how it looks once I'm done. So here we go. The version with the Tunisian crochet. As you can see, the V's are visible. It does look like knitted, even though the V's and the stitches are a bit higher, especially also compared to this. I mean, here you can clearly see the difference between these two. Here's the waistcoat stitch and here's the Tunisian crochet. The same design and everything, but the overall appearance is so much more different. And it is very squishy, so if you like to have a more squishy fabric and you can live with the fact that the V's are not super perfect, then this will probably be the version for you to go. The back is a mess, again, as a comparison. Here, all the yarn strands are locked in the waistcoat stitch. This is something that you don't have, of course, for Tunisian crochet. So you will always have those yarn strands and you will always have to be careful in terms of how strong your tension is and how much those yarn strands are then visible in the back. Again, it's an option, it's an alternative. If you're comfortable with Tunisian crochet, then you can create those patterns, of course, in the flat with Tunisian crochet. And now we can come to our third version, or the third technique, third alternative. And for that, I'm going to use my Knooking hook right here. It's a 5mm, and I'm going to take this yarn right here as a helper yarn. If you have watched my previous video about how to knit with a hook, all about Knooking, our Knooking crash course, then you might be a little bit more familiar with what Knooking is. And of course, I wanted to show you how to make patterns like this that look knitted with just using a hook. And let's just dive right into it by starting again. The start of this is the same like we just had it for the Tunisian crochet. So I'm just going to make an I-cord of 17. Here we go. Our 17 stitches. Again, of course, if you want to do it with a regular chain, you can do so as well. And now we pick up our loops the same way like we had it for the Tunisian crochet. So we can go in the second stitch and just pick up our yarn. Always the yarn from the top, because this then is also already our first round with the knit stitch. Just like this. And now we can take the hook through so that we have our work on our helper yarn. Turn your work. And now we make one round of purl stitches. So we grab the yarn and pull it through. We have the yarn in front of us, and then we grab the next yarn and twist our hook, and then also always from yarn under. So if you haven't watched my Knooking crash course video, how to knit with a hook, there you will see more detailed how the knit and the purl stitches work. And also feel free to get yourself a Knooking hook, or if you have a long and straight regular crochet hook and you're able to put a hole in the back of it or in the bottom part of it, you can do so as well to try it. The purl stitches are always a bit fiddly, but definitely doable. And don't forget the last one, all the way, just like this. And then pull the helper yarn out, pull everything on your hook, and turn your work, because now we can already start incorporating our color or our second yarn, because white isn't really a color. And now we have a full round of knit stitches, of course. So you yarn over and just pull it through, yarn over, pull it through. And our second stitch is then in the white color. So you grab the hook, grab the loop, put the new color on there and just pull it through. You can leave the yarn ends. Now it also makes sense to have both loops or both yarn strands close to your work, and then go into the next and continue in the pattern. So now we had two red ones, now comes a white one, then again two red, one white, two red, one white, and one last white one, and two red, all in the knit stitches. Then take out your helper yarn and push everything on the helper yarn, and now you can already see the yarn strands in the back. The most complicated thing about doing it with Knooking is that you always turn the work, so you have to think about where what stitch should be in order to do it. So if you have like a design like this that is completely symmetrical, this will be easier. If you have like an irregular pattern or design, this can be really tricky. So now we have our next round of purl stitches, and now we are also alternating the colors for the purl stitches. And here it was white, and now it will become red. and the next one will be then white. So you pick it up and then from the bottom take the loop up. Our next one is a red again. Then we have white, 2 whites, then a red one. I mean, the good thing about turning is that you already see how much tension you would need for those yarn strands, so you can always balance them a little bit out, and it's not the big surprise like you had it for the Tunisian. Now I made a mistake, too much talking. Because here we have now all red ones. 3 reds. And then we have the next white. Again, this technique or this version does not give us like the locked in yarn strands, so you will have the yarn strands in the back all the time. And your yarn will get twisted, so just keep that in mind. But sometimes if you beg for something, you get something, but it might not be 100% what you were hoping for, but that's life. And the last one like this, and we can take the helper yarn out. And I will most probably also take a little bit of time to untangle my yarn. And then put everything on my helper yarn again, because now you can already see how the pattern comes to life. So I will make one more round with you and then again finish it off. Where's the yarn? Here's the yarn. So knit stitch, always the easier round. And then we can take the white. And back to red and white. And take it through. And since this technique is still very new, probably for most of you, I will just make one more round with you, so you see it. So again, the purl stitches, grab the loop from the side and then yarn under. And now we also have, I think here we start now with 3 white stitches. So we have to bring that yarn all the way from the side. And pull it through. And then we have a red one. And then we have 2 more white ones. And then again we have the 3 white. I'm trying to untangle on the go. Let's see if this really works. And the last one. And pull it through. And now let's see how this looks. Pretty good. Here's one. I think probably here the tension was a bit too much, but it still works. And I will of course finish this up and then show you how it looks. So here we go. The Knooking version looks like this. And I mean, it's super thin. Here's the back with all those yarn strands. I warned you before, but I think in terms of symmetry and overall appearance, this does look quite nice. And like that, we now have 3 different options to choose from. And they basically all look the same. Here you can see the Tunisian crochet is already like twisting a lot. They all are, to be honest. So that's also something that would help when working in the round. Let me just put it like this so you can get a better comparison. So to sum it up, the first option with our waistcoat stitch, it's a bit thicker, but the stitch definition personally I think is the prettiest and most symmetrical out of all the techniques and versions that you saw. The only downfall is, of course, that you would have to cut and attach the yarn in every round. So you will have, like, as I would say, the free fringe that you would definitely have to take care of if you don't want to have it. But otherwise, this version looks very similar, if not the same, like when you would do it in the round. Option number 2 was the Tunisian crochet. It is super fluffy, and the downfall is, of course, the back with a lot of yarn strands. And in addition, you also have higher V stitches, so it definitely doesn't look as compact and neat as, for example, with the waistcoat stitch. And the third version is the Knooking version. It feels like knitted. It's thin as knitted. It's easy to do. However, you always have to turn your work in each round and have different kind of stitches that you would do. The back also shows a lot of yarn strand, similar to Fair Isle knitting, but again, it's more symmetrical than, for example, the Tunisian crochet, and also the stitch definition here is more like a real knitting project. So this one is more going towards the waistcoat stitch. And now it's basically up to you. You can try them all to see which one works best for you, or you just already go with the one that you think looks best. If you want to know my personal preference, even though there are so many yarn strands, I would always go with this, because I think visually this looks absolutely amazing and so beautiful, as if I would have made it like on a computer in Illustrator. I mean, all the stitches look so nice, whereas the other ones, I don't know. Will I ever use this technique with Tunisian crochet again? Probably not. For the Knooking, I might do it, but not in the flat, because when you do this in the round, you only have to do knit stitches and then just add the next color to it, and it will be so much easier than with the turning. So I probably might do this again with Knooking, but definitely not in the flat. So this would be my recommendation. And if there is something that, for example, like this, where you do have like a front and a back together, and you don't mind having it a bit thicker in terms of appearance, then I would always make it in the round, because it's so much easier, and then put both sides together and you have a super fluffy and comfy piece. So what do you think? Now it's up to you to pick the technique that you like best to make your crochet that looks like knitting designs and patterns in the flat, either with the traditional waistcoat stitch, where you would have to cut after each round, or the Tunisian crochet version that looks a bit different, but still you can see the pattern and the designs, or you go with our new technique on my channel with the Knooking, where it looks exactly like knitting. So thank you so much for watching. I hope I was able to answer the final unanswered questions about the crochet that looks like knitting. And as I mentioned before, the crochet that looks like knitting series will continue very soon with new patterns, new projects, new designs, and I hope that you are going to join me on this awesome journey. And until then, I wish you happy crocheting, happy Tunisian crocheting, or happy Knooking. So I hope to see you back again only at the Totally Fierce Crochet channel. Bye.